1 month ago today, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed in Utah, and it hit me harder than it should. It took me a few weeks to get over it, and I was over here thinking to myself, why? Why was it so difficult for me to get over it? Why did it hit me so hard? I didn't really know. I didn't know the guy, and I didn't really watch a lot of his content. I'm gonna be honest. I watched a few good interviews, and I resonated with his stuff. I agreed with his point of view most of the time. I aligned with him politically, but I I didn't really watch his stuff. I didn't really have a connection to his content in the way I do with some other good creators. So I was over here thinking, why was it hitting me so hard? So I'm making this episode today to try and answer that question because I know I'm not the only one that's felt this deep level of pain and mourning for his loss that really shouldn't have been felt, or you think shouldn't have been felt, but perhaps was felt for the right reasons. So first and foremost, it's, of course, the trauma. When I think about it right away, on the day that he got shot, I saw that angle, that front angle of him getting shot in the neck and the blood coming out and the blood spitting out and gushing out. And I replayed that video over and over and over again. So that's the trauma aspect. My brain took that in and it was heavy. It was something very heavy, and it was the shock and the suddenness, unexpectedness of that happening, and the trauma thing stuck with me for a few days, and that's absolutely true. But it's not just that. It's not just that. It's a little bit deeper than that. I have to be humble and recognize that that's a part of it, but it's because of the significance of it, the meaning of this, that he was shot for what he believes in. Whether I don't know what the motives were, but this idea of being shot for what you believe in and literally losing your life over some things you said, that sits deep with me, man, because truly that means every single one of us online is at risk at one point or another. Of course, it's more susceptible in America because they have guns and they allow guns all the time. Definitely more susceptible, more probable that some guy comes out and does that. But still, it's a risk for everyone because it's proof that, if someone really wants you dead, they'll find a way to do it, which is a scary thought, man. It's a scary thought for each and every one of us. What does this mean for us in the future? What does this mean for free speech? What does this mean for the conversation and articulating our ideas and debate? That's all Charlie Kirk really stood for, is the free speech, the conversation, the debate, trying to get to some sort of a mutual understanding between two opposing viewpoints. That's really all he stood for. And he's now dead because of it. And that's why it sits deep with me. And of course, he was also a man of faith. He was also very, very faithful in his belief in Jesus, and he used faith as backing up anything really he said about political things. It's based and deeply rooted in his faith and in the principles taught by Christ and taught by God in the Bible. And, well, it serves as good comfort to know that, yes, he was very faithful and he is resting in heaven alongside the Father in heaven, and it's good to know that. But it's still a hole that's been left here on this earth because I think the biggest way that resonated with him is exactly that: deep-rooted faith. That faith is the backbone for all of my pursuits, just as it was for his. And again, that hits with me deep. And now he's no longer here. And just that idea of he's here, he's a guy, he's online, he's making stuff, you're watching stuff, and then he's just not. And then all I see is videos of some of his old content, and people were like in those first couple weeks making like videos highlighting the good parts of him and some controversial parts of him, some funny parts of him. That was nice to see. But it's just hard to realize that like a guy like that who was so impactful, don't underestimate the impact that he had on my generation, Generation Z, and even millennials. It's his impact, and now he's no longer here, that makes a lot of us feel very, very pained inside and very hurt because of it. Because he did. He spoke out, and he was a great speaker, he was a great leader, and he impacted my age demographic in a great way. I wasn't necessarily a part of that, but I recognized just how important his voice was for a long time, and now it's no longer here. And of course, it made me feel a lot more pained that a lot of people were celebrating the death, and you see the evil in the world. And really what it showed is that this isn't liberal versus conservative. This is really good versus evil. This whole battle of truth and this whole battle of righteousness. It's good versus evil. A lot of liberal people that completely disagree with him and arguably hated him when he was alive because of how much they hated him, at least were able to have the humanity aspect and say, it's sad to see him go, and no one should be dying in that way or getting shot for their beliefs. A lot of people give him credit because they did speak out in that way. But a lot of people, the radicals and the evil, were over here celebrating. And it really is, and that really hit me a little bit more, to say like that's just how evil the world is, and that's just how sad some people's lives are, that they got to celebrate a guy getting shot in the neck, and for all to see, right? Not just some guy on the street, for all to see, like hundreds of people at the event, probably thousands watching it live, and even more sharing the video, spraying the video a few minutes and hours after it actually happened. So I wouldn't wish that on anyone, and it's truly sad to see that, and that stuck with me a little more, and that's why it kind of hits, right? It hits deep, and it's good. It's good to know. It's good to know who's on the side of truth, who's on the side of good, and who's not. It really revealed a lot of people's character and a lot of people's morals. So that's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to just, write down, take that down, be like, all right. I see people even around me that I'm like, all right, buddy. All right. Yeah, that's what you think about this. Okay, man. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'll write that down, and I'll remember it in the future. For whenever something happens to me or happens to one of them, what will happen? Something closer to home, closer to us, how will they react? And that's something to take note of. So it's a good thing. It gives you a little bit of clarity to know who's with you and who's against you, who's on the side of good and who's on the side of evil. And that's been revealed in boatloads after Charlie Kirk's death. And also what doesn't help is because the FBI case, it's actually so weird, man. Because it doesn't look like the guy that they arrested is the shooter, or that he's the only person involved. It really does look like, if you look at the evidence, if you look at some of the facts that the FBI put out that just don't align with the situation, it just looks weird, man. It looks shady, and it looks like there are more people involved. And I pray and I hope for the fact, I say this all the time, I would rather it be some crazy leftist lunatic who that's what we have right now. That's the information we have right now. I'd rather be that than some deeply constructed government operation, because at least a radical leftist lunatic, like, there's nothing you could do about it. It happened, and the guy's crazy. He's in jail now, and it's good, and justice has been served at the very least. But if it was a deeper thing, if there's more people involved, if the government are trying to cover it up, then what does that mean? What does that mean for the rest of us? That they're perfectly fine with killing a guy because they don't agree with him, killing a guy because he was affecting the younger generation to change and move away from these radical ideas that have been pushed for at least a decade, if not longer now. It's very scary, because if they can do that to him, they can do that to each and every one of us that has a platform. That's why I pray that it was just a radical guy in America where guns are easily accessible, and that it wasn't some bigger thing. Because if it is a bigger thing, it gets even deeper and even crazier for the rest of us, because I personally don't know what that means. So the biggest question that comes to mind with this whole Charlie Kirk situation is, why him? Why was it him? Why did they choose to kill him? You can look at it on surface level and be like, well, he convinced a lot of people, to follow God, to follow Christ, and also to change their political ideas and shift themselves a little bit. But he never had like this worldly impact. There's definitely bigger people than him that they could have taken measures to shoot and kill. So why is Charlie Kirk the guy that's been shot and he's no longer here? For example, a guy like Andrew Tate. I'd say Andrew Tate has had way more of an impact on people of my generation, my age demographic, than Charlie Kirk has. And Andrew Tate talks about the 3 lives, which is, first they cancel you, then they put you in jail, and then they kill you. And this is the they being like the establishment, the government, the oligarchy, the people that really run the world. If they don't like what you're saying, they'll put you through that. Charlie Kirk already went through the cancellation phase, and they skipped putting him in jail and just shot him and killed him. That's why I say I hope it was a radical guy rather than an operation from something deeper, something bigger. Because if it's an operation, it just basically proves everything. Not just the stuff that Andrew Tate has said, but the stuff that we've kind of slowly been learning to actually be true when it comes to the government and how they're actually not to be trusted. So some potential reasons as to why they chose to kill Charlie Kirk, or, I say they, well, the they could be, the devil could be the they, right? The devil chose to choose Kirk, or you could say it's the government, whichever one you want to choose to believe. I'll say, for all intents and purposes, because we don't know if it's actually a thing, it's just a theory. But if the devil chose Kirk because, well, first and foremost, he would have been a future president almost certainly. He was so deep into politics, and he would have had such meaningful change, and all the people that he's inspired in my generation, people younger than me, in 10 years' time, they would have grown up to be adults, and he would have had a lot of votes already secured in the bag. So that's first and foremost the main reason why, is because he almost certainly would have been a president, and he would have been very tough to deal with for the establishment, because they don't agree with anything the guy says, because they want control over the people. They don't want a guy to come in and change that. So that's number one. And number two, of course, he was one of the loudest voices in America. On TikTok, he had like 15 million followers, and he helped Trump get elected because of his TikTok campaign. He reached the younger audience on TikTok, and TikTok usually doesn't allow conservative people on there, because they're very censoring with the way they moderate their content, especially the type of stuff that Charlie Kirk does. Sometimes it would get pretty feisty. Sometimes it would get pretty interesting, and he'd make some funny jokes that would be considered a little bit radical, let's say. But he had that effect, and he had a big voice. So maybe the reason why he's no longer with us is because he had a voice that was too big. Or they want to shut up free speech. Again, the devil wants free speech to be shut up, and he was the biggest advocate for it. So my opinion is, to shoot him in the neck is basically to say you're shooting him in his vocal cords, to say shut up. And not only did you shut him up, you killed him, right? So obviously that's a little bit more than that. So it's a bit of a symbolic thing, the placement of the shot. And to me, it's just a little bit interesting. Why would it have been there? Because he's the biggest advocate for free speech, for conversation, and someone wanted to shut him up. Almost certainly the 100% the devil did. But whoever it was here, whether it's a radical guy or a government operation, someone wanted to shut him up. So that's why. That's why I find the Charlie Kirk situation interesting. That's why it took me a long time to get over it. And even still, I'm thinking about it. And obviously, it's been a month since it happened. And things have transpired the way they have. And we'll see what happens in the coming months, because I think things will still be revealed as to specifically what happened that day. And because things aren't over, there's still way more holes you got to plug up to figure out what actually happened. So we'll see what happened. But a lot of it is very, very concerning for me personally, in my life, in what I do. And so that's why it sat deep with me. And you know what? If you're a Christian and you resonate with this, you don't even really have to be a Christian. But if you resonate with, some of the stuff I'm saying, if you made it this far in the podcast, thank you. And all I say is, you have to be bold. You have to be even more courageous in your speech. Whether you're a Christian defending God and spreading the word of Christ, or you're just a guy that's a conservative and wants to focus on free speech, on getting your word out there, on stopping this radicalism that's coming from the left, and to limit the amount of evil that we have and we see in this world. If you're a part of any of those groups, all I say is you have to be even more bold, even more courageous. Not just hide away, be scared because, if he killed him, maybe they'll kill me. No, you can't be like that. Charlie Kirk's legacy is not going to just die. People are going to be standing up and being even more bold. And I've seen a bunch of people online stand up and start reporting the truth and reporting tragedies that happened, and speaking up and standing up for free speech. So that's what I encourage you to do, and that's my overarching message of this video, of this whole situation. And that's the biggest lesson: to be even more bold and even more courageous in what you say, in how you communicate. Improve your communication skills, because it will really help you get your message out. And that's that. It was a tough situation, and I pray for all of the people around him that have had to suffer in even greater ways because they knew him directly. But I know that truly the good will prevail over the evil, and it really isn't a left versus right thing. It's not a man versus woman thing. Anything in the world. It's not a race thing. It's not a sex thing. It's not a gender identity thing. It's truly good versus evil. It is the battle of God versus the devil, the battle of good versus evil, and the good will prevail.